امروز ایران سربلندتر از هر زمان دیگر آماده گسترش روابط خود با جهان بر پایه احترام متقابل و منافع ملی خود می باشد. امروز دنیا به خوبی می داند که ملت ایران مسیر زندگی در تعامل با جهان به دور از خشونت و افراطیگری را برگزیده است.
It was a decisive victory that ended a bitterly contested election. Nearly 3 in 4 eligible voters went to the ballots. Iran's youth and middle class overwhelmingly said yes to keeping Hassan Rouhani as president for 4 more years.
This is a very crucial moment for our country, actually. We would like to make connection with an international community.
که تحریم‌های هسته و بعدش بقیه تحریم‌ها رو هم برداره.
انتظار دارم بیکارایی که الان هستن همشون کار داشته باشن اینا.
Rouhani's competition tapered down to one man in the final days before the vote. Ebrahim Raisi, a conservative cleric and custodian of the wealthiest charity in the Muslim world, in charge of Iran's holiest shrine. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei appointed Raisi to that powerful position. Raisi was widely seen as Khamenei's preferred choice, as well as that of Iran's conservative establishment, which holds power over most of the country's security institutions and the judiciary.
رأی تشریفاتی نیست یه رأی واقعی.
Raisi ran a populist campaign which appealed to poorer voters by pledging to create millions of jobs, a platform which sought to build on widespread frustration with Rouhani's handling of the economy. While the 2015 deal with world powers ended some sanctions in exchange for curbs to Iran's nuclear program, many, if not most Iranians, haven't yet felt the expected economic benefits. Iran's reintegration into the global economy is only partially fulfilled. Rouhani's main challenge will be to translate that into tangible results for Iranians, especially for the country's youth, who face more than double the national unemployment rate at around 30%. And while the supreme leader wields ultimate power in the Islamic Republic, Rouhani's re-election is perhaps an indication of a growing challenge to the institutions which have kept systemic reform at bay. Randolph Nogel, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Burzu Dargahi. He's a Middle East correspondent for BuzzFeed News. From Dubai, Camelia Intikhabi Fard. She's a journalist, author, and expert in Middle Eastern and Iranian affairs. And from Leicester in the UK, Shabir Hassan Ali. He's a political analyst and supporter of Ebrahim Raisi. Thanks all of you for joining us. Burzu, let me start with you. So, is this where the trajectory is going now? Reform. Yes, there's still Vilayat Faqih, and it's a system that's not like a Swedish democracy, but is Iran going in a kind of reformist direction?
It does seem that way. It does seem like every time there's very high turnout in an Iranian election and the choice is between a moderate or a reformist and a conservative, Iranians overwhelmingly go for the moderate or the reformist. The candidate like Rouhani, who campaigns on an anti-establishment platform, and this time he really pushed the boundaries in terms of the rhetoric that he used, in terms of the issues that he touched upon, the issues that his surrogates touched upon. That candidate always seems to win when there's decent turnout. Another very important issue is that hardliners and conservatives controlled everything from 2005 and to 2013. And they messed up the economy. They turned Iran into an international pariah. They alienated many of the country's minorities, including Kurds and Sunni and Baluchi minorities. Civil wars started springing up at the periphery of the country. And people in general are sick of that and are very disillusioned with the hardliners' handling of the country.
Okay, so Shabir, Judge Ebrahim Raisi only received 38.5% of the vote. Why was it such a lousy attempt at becoming president? Why did he fail so badly?
I don't think it's a case of whether he failed badly or not. I think your earlier guest is grossly mistaken when, and even yourself, when you say that, is this the end for the system of wilayat al-faqih and stuff like this?
I didn't
this
say
shows
that. I
how
said,
little people understand
one said
that
that.
system.
Shabir, none of us said that actually. I said there's still wilayat faqih, but are we saying that Iran is going towards a sort of more progressive, moderate agenda, that direction? That was my question. But please, proceed. Go ahead.
Right. Okay, so what Iran is doing, yes, Mr. Raisi didn't win the election. Okay, it's no surprise, it's not a problem. The fact that this many people came out, I believe the turnout was in excess of 73%.
Yes.
And also the fact that Ayatollah Khamenei, before the election, had actually said that whatever the result of this election, people need to stand by it. And if people start to cause problems, then they will have to stand against him. This kind of like diminishes this idea of hardline, reformist. Everyone in Iran wants to progress.
No, hold on.
The problem
hold
Iran
on. There's a difference
has
between accepting
is that
election results and being.
Since 1979.
Sure.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
But I just want to come in there. There's a difference. People are not being called hardliners because they're not accepting the results of the election. They're being called hardliners because of their policies. So fair enough, that's great.
I'm not saying they are.
That's great that Raisi
yes,
is
but this whole idea, no, this whole idea of segmenting the policies back and forth into hardline reformists, even Agha Raisi, even Mr. Raisi, I was instrumental in organizing an interview for him. And I know his policies. His policies are not hardline. This is a mistake for people to say this. People just assume that if someone has been nominated to the custodianship of Mashhad, or someone who is, perceived as being closer to the poor people, this person is immediately hardline. This is not the case.
Okay, fair enough.
What Mr. Raisi was saying very, very clearly is actually very similar to what Mr. Rouhani is saying.
Okay,
look, we want to have good relations with everyone.
Okay.
Except for Israel. Except for Israel, we want good relations with everyone. But when Iran sits down and signs JCPOA, and the day after America turns around and imposes a set of new sanctions on Iran, what do you want Iran to do?
Okay, that's good, and we're going to bring in the Americans in a few minutes. Sure.
What do you want them to do?
Okay, good points. Let me ask Camelia. Camelia, is Shabir right in saying that people misread Raisi and misread the whole kind of hardline versus moderate framing of all of this? What do you think, Camelia?
Not really. I'm assuming, I'm examining what had happened in Iran and not saying the supreme leader has been directly behind of Mr. Raisi. Actually having the Revolutionary Guards and that sort of the hardliners supporting Mr. Raisi makes the public so much disappointed of him running. Plus not having any experiences in the office, just running a sort of a charity in the city of Mashhad. He haven't had any experiences he can be offered to the people as a good record.
I think you'll find Mashhad is a bit more than a charity, my dear.
It is a charity. It's a big charity, and
and plus,
I'm assuming still they haven't had any kind of the experiences in the office.
Give Camelia just a moment.
If you excuse. Yes, can I please finish my word? Yes. And also having the fears, how Mr. Raisi being the president may support the Revolutionary Guards agenda, interfering in the region, it makes Iranian, despite of being disappointed about the economy and the high number of the employment, to support Mr. Rouhani as a person who is moderate, and his record clearly showed he is not about to increasing the tension in the region with the international community. And all of them, it makes that clear for the public. Having Rouhani in power means more openness to the West, to the international community, more economical opportunity, and a good relation with the neighbors also will supporting the agenda to benefit Iran's economy.
Okay.
I believe Iranian actually smartly makes the clear choices, and they like to have more open with the world rather than isolation.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Burzu here. I mean, to Shabir's credit, one of the points he made quite subtly, and I guess it's worth spelling out here, is that from the outside there were a lot of people, particularly in the West, saying, oh, this is a sham election. I mean, even, Eli Lake wrote, Iranians re-elect a fake reformer in a fake election, right?
He's a fake journalist.
Right, so you have that sort of perception. And they say, well, the real power is with Khamenei. He's a dictator. Well, he sucks as a dictator if the guy he wanted to be president didn't get
he's the ultimate
elected, right?
Arbiter.
Right.
He's the ultimate sort of decision maker
right.
when in a consensus system.
He'd be a really bad dictator if the guy he chose didn't make it, right? So isn't this credit to the system that it's more democratic than people give it credit for?
He's not the ultimate decision maker. This is a misconception. I'm afraid that you're very wrong in your understanding.
He's the ultimate decision maker. He's the supreme leader. His title is supreme leader.
Correct something over here. No, I need to come in and I need to correct something. No, you need to understand one very important thing about the position of the supreme leader. The duration, the term of the supreme leader is infinitesimal. It's tiny. At any time, he can be deposed if he works against Iran and against the revolution. He's the only person who can be deposed at any time.
Who can depose him, Shabir?
He does not sit down and say that I support the Guardian Council, the Assembly of Experts. Actually, they're appointed by the people. If you actually understood the Iranian system, the Guardian Council, the Assembly of Experts, the Expediency Council are nominated collectively
who vets
by the people.
all those people? Who vets, who allows who to run in elections, sir?
The Constitution.
The Constitution.
Habibi, listen.
The Guardian Council is the ultimate arbiter, and that is under the control of the Supreme Leader. He was asking me a question, actually.
Shabir, come in.
It is not under the control. The Guardian Council, the whole point of the Guardian Council is to supervise the leader.
This
it is not something that says,
you guys just can continue on and on.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
But is that important to say
don't want to listen.
that has been supported by the Constitution or not?
Let me just finish what I'm saying, and then maybe you can...
Okay, 15 seconds, please, Shabir. Finish your point,
Say
and then
again?
I'll go to the other two.
All I'm saying is that the leader doesn't impose the government. The people, we saw 73+% of the people of Iran elected someone who everyone says is against the supreme leader. But this is not the case. Mr. Rouhani, Mr. Raisi, Mr. Khalibaf, all of the candidates, all of them support the system, right? They support the system of Wilayat al-Faqih. Everyone, all of the candidates,
but nobody has suggested that
positive relations with outside.
Okay, so let's talk about outside. Nobody suggested.
Let's get back to a very good point that you made.
They all want positive relations.
He was actually making a very good point that I think that Mr. Shabir would agree with, that you were making and that we were trying to discuss, that Iran's system is a lot more fluid and flexible than many people inside the Beltway give it credit for. And they have a big incentive to sort of, a lot of people in the world, a lot of people in the analyst community have a big incentive to depict Iran as this monolithic dictatorship. It's not. Ultimately, big decisions of national security go to the Supreme National Security Council, where the Supreme Leader has a veto power. But everything is sort of done on a kind of consensus basis. So the President has quite a bit of power, the head of the army has quite a bit of power, the Speaker of Parliament has a lot of power. It's a very hybrid system that has elements of a theocratic dictatorship as well as a Republican democracy.
And I know Shabir's going to disagree with that, but hold on, Shabir, before you come in. I want to bring in a tweet from Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, because what was really interesting is he was responding to the president of the US going to Saudi Arabia. He said, Iran, fresh from real elections, attacked by POTUS in that bastion of democracy and moderation. He's talking about Saudi. Foreign policy or simply milking KSA of $480 billion? Camelia, I want to ask you, because Trump had time, he had, I guess, less than 48 hours to change his speech if he wanted to after the Iranian election. The US has doubled down in their support for Saudi and the Gulf states and their allies, and they still consider Iran the biggest threat in the region. Does Javad Zarif have a point?
It is. Yes, actually, Iran is a threat for the region. I believe the regional countries, the Arab countries, are so fed up with Iran interferences about the Revolutionary Guards present in Syria, in Iraq, and fed up with seeing Iranian missiles has been hitting the Saudi ground. All of those has been combined such atmosphere to be so fed up, and I believe that has been addressed by President Trump quite well, and also despite I am not supporting any war at this region, I am saying that the threat has been imposed Iran should be taken serious, not because of the number of the missile and the amount of the weapons has been sold to the Saudi Arabia, because of the defense and the security agreement between Saudi and the United States, which it makes Iran so vulnerable if it wants to continue to those regional interferences.
Camelia, let's think about this for a second. Just very briefly. Let's think about this for a second. In Saudi Arabia, people are still executed for witchcraft and sorcery, right? And you have the US president there and Rex Tillerson talking about human rights in Iran. Don't you see the cognitive dissonance there, Camelia?
There's a couple of important things, though. One is that this deal started, this deal got underway.
We are not talking about a... We are not talking about a perfect human rights record in Saudi Arabia. We are not talking about a perfect human rights in Saudi Arabia. We are talking about a crisis in the region which has been affected the daily life of everyone and everywhere, from the United States down to everywhere at this region. We are talking about what it has been made Iran so vulnerable to be called as a terrorist nation, which is shameful.
Arabia has
and I believe Mr. Rouhani has been promised frequently to make that up with the region, to make the good relation with the neighbors. And at this time, the world has been matched. The world has been matched the act for Iran. And I saw today at President Rouhani's press conference, he has a very good tone. He said they are waiting to see what kind of policy the United States will be pursuing in the region, and based on that, they can follow up. I'm seeing that very much promising. Mr. Rouhani needs to address this issue with the Revolutionary Guards and make Iran Foreign Ministry actively pursue a policy like they made them to nuclear deal, workable now with the regional talks.
Okay, cool.
At this point,
let me ask Burzo,
we could say yes, the changes has been hit Iran.
Okay, let me ask Burzo then. It goes back to the beginning here. Does Rouhani even have control over foreign policy?
I think he does have quite a bit of influence over foreign policy, especially if you look at the nuclear deal in the past few years. Javads, his very popular foreign minister, many people, many of the young, good-looking people who go out into the streets wearing green scarves and denoting their rebellion towards the regime are also big fans of this guy, Javad Zarif, who's a very tried and true supporter of the system. So I think he does have some influence. What he doesn't have a lot of influence on is near foreign policy. The areas around Iran's borders are very much under the influence of the Revolutionary Guard. The Revolutionary Guard and I've experienced this firsthand, traveling across back and forth Iran's borders. It's the Revolutionary Guard that controls policy in the near abroad, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Gulf, etc., even the Caucasus to some extent. And the foreign ministry has less and less. The foreign ministry has more and more of a role the more you get further from Iran.
Okay, so Shabir, could there be some soul searching maybe for the Iranians that they are those? Forget the fact that Trump goes to Saudi Arabia and they've sold hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons to them. But Iran supports Assad, for example. Assad kills hundreds of thousands of people. Can Iran do better on foreign policy? Is this an opportunity to maybe take stock?
I think Iran's foreign policy, there is nothing wrong with it. I think your guest in Dubai, I believe, is talking about saying things which, to be fair, are very, very strange. Saying that Iran is somehow a threat to the region. Iran is the one place. When Daesh invaded Mosul, yes, okay, fine. I didn't remember your name. I apologize. But the point is that when Daesh came into Mosul, Iran was the first country to come and assist and to help the Iraqi government in dealing with that threat. When the same thing happened in Syria, when the West, when Israel, when Saudi funded all of these mini al-Qaedas like al-Nusra and Ahrar al-Sham and all of these terrorist groups, foreign terrorist groups, including some sadly sponsored by Turkey. When all of this happened, Iran and Hezbollah came to support the Syrian people. Now, the fact that the Syrian people elected Bashar al-Assad is up to them. It is not for me sitting in England or anyone else sitting anywhere else to turn around and say, I disagree with what the people have done. I respect the Syrian, yes, it was a free election. Yes, because I know a number of people who are observers. I've spoken to a number of senators who actually went there and have spoken to people there. And I know that election was far better far more democratic than what you had in Washington, in America recently.
Okay.
Or potentially what's happened in Turkey.
Okay, okay.
So, you know, this needs to be understood.
Okay, Shabir.
You know, you need to be fair with Iran.
Okay.
What Iran does in the region
sorry, Camelia, I've got to wrap.
has to be
Camelia,
governed by what is happening in
I've got to wrap.
Sure.
I tried to squeeze this as much as possible. I tried to squeeze the last 30 seconds out of this, but now I'm way over. I've still got to move on to another segment. I'm sorry, Camelia, Shabir, and Borzo. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.